Welcome back. It's week 2. This is the first time I've been able to sit down and actually do this. I decided to do it in here, not out in the other room with the weird lighting. Doing this week's recap this way because I didn't have time to do the filming for each day. As I said previously, the weekend was a convention weekend, so I had no time to do any kind of filming. I barely had time to look at what I was doing. This page is basically the culmination of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th. This was all, and all 3 days were done on the train. So you see, I did a printout of the sonnet so I could number the lines, get an idea of where the accents are. Line 3 seemed a little weird to me at the time I was doing this, but after a little research I figured it out. On line 3 it looks like it has an extra syllable, or possibly 2 extra syllables. And there was one word that, in my book, it's spelled out, the word watery. It has the E, but in another source it has the E crossed out with an apostrophe in place. So again, I figured that out later. I'll get to that. Friday was the 8th. The day 8 was basically me figuring out what I'd be able to do either during the convention or after the convention or before the convention. And the train was the best option. So day 9, on my phone, my paper out here, I picked out some of the words that, those words that you think you know, but you want to make sure you understand them correctly. So I picked out a few words to define. One word was defaced, to mar the surface or appearance or disfigure. The word fell. To knock or strike or shoot down, and as an adjective, a fierce, ferocious, dreadful, savage, destructive, deadly. From the Middle English, fell, F-E-L, meaning treacherous or deceitful or false. And then the word raze, R-A-Z-E, to tear down, demolish, level to the ground. It's referring to down raised, which I guess you could say is another way of saying tear down. And then just because I looked up the word brass. It's an alloy of copper and zinc mostly. It's yellow in color. It is able to be hammered thin. It's resistant to many forms of corrosion. It's commonly used in musical instruments. After some research, possibly used in money and weaponry at some point. I also looked up the word ruminate, which, it's to meditate or muse, ponder. Another definition for ruminate, to obsessively revisit the same thought or theme over and over again. And then confounded, meaning bewildered or confused. Day 10, I kind of went back to a couple of words. The word state, I didn't write it down, but I figured just looking it up could be referring to a person's being, the way they are in that moment, state of being, or it could be referring to government or body of power. And then the term outworn, sort of out of date, obsolete, outmoded, no longer accepted, used, or believed. But day 10 was primarily set for just looking at the poem and trying to make my own analysis before going and looking at somebody else's analysis. So yeah. So here was day 9 down here, bleeding a little bit to day 10, which is primarily on this side. my little scribble. Line 1, when I have seen by times fell hand defaced. Time's effect on an old or ancient structure, places captured or destroyed by battles. I just kind of didn't go line by line, just sort of as a whole. Brass to me seemed to allude to war, soldiers. Modernly, brass is referring to like people in command, top brass. Could be referring to metals now that I think of it, or those who have like the more ornamental swords. Maybe. Could be a stretch. But historically, brass was used, like I said, used in instruments, so like trumpets, like horns used for signaling advancements in battle. Lofty towers down raised could be referring to an actual tower or people who are above sort of the lower ranks in power, being pulled down out of that powerful position. Hungry ocean, battling the firm soil, could be nature sort of competing with each other, or the ocean is a kingdom, like the mass population getting advantage over the people in charge, but the people in charge are still there in power. The soil, like the soil, which is resistant, and the winds over the ocean. This is all sleep-deprived ramblings on a shaky train. Line 8 is increasing store with loss and loss with store. I don't know what I wrote there. So I was basically thinking the spoils of war, sort of. So in order to gain, you have to lose, is what I was going for. I have seen such interchange of state, or state itself confounded to decay. So, and that's the third quatrain. So it's sort of connected to the previous statement, but it's also separate. So it could be continuing the thought of the previous thought, or it's continuing something else. What did I write? How war, conflict change a nation, a people in some ways, sort of hastening time's effects, or the stagnation of a nation or people, the unchanging nature confuses why it's falling apart. So the speaker looks around at the changes, the destruction of the present and the past, and seeing it in his sort of smaller viewpoint, like the ravages of time, and thinking this is eventually going to take away the one I love, and I guess sort of questioning, is it worth it? It's a heartbreaking thought, knowing that the change will eventually take away the one they love. Yeah, so that's it for my weekend ramblings. So then moving on to day 11. So I was able to look up some structure notes for sonnet number 64. That's when I figured out the watery pronunciation. Watery is watery, so it's 2 syllables instead of 3, which I kind of figured, but it was line 3 that, also looking at, figured out that towers is 1 syllable. Actually, I think I was looking at Wikipedia, and that's the article described both watery and towers, but towers being 1 syllable, so it gets rid of that extra sound, which doesn't make sense, but English is weird. Still physically recovering from the weekend, so it's just me collecting my thoughts, reading the poem, figuring out pronunciations and all that. Day 12, I was basically continuing my thoughts from the previous day. Interesting to note on that same wiki article, it was line 7 had sort of an irregular syllabic pattern. So the ictus or strong syllable patterns in line 7, looking at the line, make more sense because the words are firm, soil, win, these very strong, hard words, whereas the weaker words and the and of are sort of a conjunction, a definite article, and a preposition. They are connective words, but they're definitely weaker in the line. And as for my sleep-deprived analysis of the poem, I found I wasn't too far off from what a lot of other analysis have found. The struggle against time, loss. You can't have losses without wins, or wins without losses. Penny's Poetry Pages wiki article had some interesting analysis and sources, so that's what I pulled from mostly, just because everything else was just kind of all over the place. Having while fearing to lose is already a form of losing, and the end, destruction or decay of inanimate objects. Day 13, again continuing my thoughts from the previous day. Another interesting note, line 12, is more plain, simple speech when compared to some of the, well, not to some, to the rest of the sonnet in general. It's, that time will come and take my love away. It's just very simple syllables and simple word that anybody would be able to understand it. And then it's just kind of looking at Penny's Poetry Pages line by line analysis of the poem. It's quite interesting. Line 1, defaced, could be representing defaced or destroyed idols, images of saints, Rich proud cost of outworn buried age could be referring to monuments, churches, and graveyards, which were subject to a lot of ruin, decay, and vandalism. Line 3, when sometime lofty towers I see down raised. Sometime or sometimes could be meaning formerly. Slave to rage, under its power. That analysis didn't... It's funny, this analysis didn't really know what to make of the word brass, which I think might be a more modern problem. So I went to ShakespeareWords.com for another definition. Noun, old form brassy, or B-R-A-S-S-E. The definition they gave was brazenness, effrontery, and impudence. So brazenness, which is another word for shamelessness, effrontery, also shamelessness, impertinent, boldness. So that kind of gives another way of thinking of brass in this line. It made me think about it some more. So brass could be referring to money or weapons, or could be referring to the strong, shameless, bold personality of the character, forever bound to violent, destructive human action, the mortal rage. Line 5 from this person's analysis. When I've seen the hungry ocean gain advantage on the kingdom of the shore. So basically 5 and 6, they're describing imagery of a advancing army gaining land by pushing forward, and then the army securing a foothold on land, an advantage over the enemy. Or, this is an aside from me, after looking at some other stuff, it could literally be the ocean crashing against the shoreline and the firm soil wind of the watery main. So even as the ocean is pushing against the shore, when the ocean recedes, the shore is still there, the dirt is still there. In fact, stuff is being left behind, which leads into the final line of that quatrain. And this person's analysis is kind of a long-winded, and I didn't bother writing it down. So instead, I'm just going to say, since it's part of the ocean and shore imagery, it's the sort of the ocean can take life while providing sustenance to life by taking life. So sort of eternal cycle of taking and giving. Probably. Alright, so back to this person's analysis. No, line 9. So basically line 9 for their analysis was similar to what I was talking about with government power structures changing, shifting hands. Line 10, they gave a different definition for the word confounded, meaning of being brought to ruin as well as thwarted or blocked, or state itself confounded to decay. So that, I don't know where they found that definition. I'll stick with mine. They're confused about their decay. Line 11, they're just defining ruminate. And then line 12, describing the contrast of the complex thoughts, as words used previously to highlight a simple, stark reality that time will take what is dearest to us. And then line 13, the thought is as painful as the thought of death, referring to the thought rather than to death. So death is essentially the representative of the poet, or the speaker, who is weeping for his beloved's mortality. I can't read my handwriting today. So there we go. Nice and condensed. What is today? So day 14 was basically collecting all these thoughts together. I'm just going to do a quick read on here. And alright, still day 14. I just checked the footage I recorded earlier, and what I was trying to do did not record all the way. So I'm going to start this little piece over. So what I was going to do is like the first official read-through of Sonnet 64. So here we go. It's not going to be perfect. That's going to be for next week. Well, it's going to start next week anyway. Alright, so here's the first official read-through of Sonnet 64. When I have seen by time's fell hand defaced the rich proud cost of outworn buried age, when sometime lofty towers I see down raised, and brass eternal slave to mortal rage, when I have seen the hungry ocean gain advantage on the kingdom of the shore, and the firm soil win of the watery main, increasing store with loss and loss with store, When I have seen such interchange of state, or state itself confounded to decay, ruin hath taught me thus to ruminate, that time will come and take my love away. This thought is as a death, which cannot choose, but weep to have that which it fears to lose. A very rough read through. I'm so sorry for that, but next week is going to start the perfecting of it. Yes. So I got 2 weeks to learn this. I will do it. I will do it.